Welcome back. So we are joined today with a special guest, and a timely one at that, with everything going on in the real estate market. We've got Norma Matto with Jefferson Capital Mortgage, and today we're going to just kind of unpack the what's going on in the mortgage market. It's pretty volatile, and strategies and things agents, buyers, sellers can implement to get them into a property, get them into a mortgage, to be able to navigate this world when they need to buy. Because as we all know, most house purchases, most refinances, most anything going on with a home are not really investment based. They're situation based. They're based on, I need to going through a divorce. I'm getting married. I'm having a kid. There's a lot of situations why somebody buys a house, and very infrequently is it a strictly investment reason. So Norma's here today to kind of help us break it down and help your clients to navigate this wild, volatile world of mortgages. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So walk us through kind of, this is a timely conversation, and this podcast might not age well because the market changes, but today we're in, the first part of November, and today as we speak, where are we with mortgage rates? Not necessarily the number, but what's driving the force of where we are with things?
Well, I think inflation is the big word in the economy, and it's driving a lot of things, including interest rates on mortgages and borrowing rates in general for people who are buying cars or using credit cards, and they see that pressure reflected in the rates that they're paying to borrow money or to use other money. So that's something that has, especially in the last couple of months, been felt in the mortgage rate scenario or context. So it's not only where we are with the rate number, but the pace at which we have arrived there has gotten a lot of feelings stirred up, or sentiment stirred up when it comes to this not being necessarily the highest rates have ever been by any means, but they just got there pretty quick. So that's got a lot of folks feeling kind of stirred up about that. But
since we're in on the scary part of this discussion, so a year ago versus now, I mean, mortgages and refinances being done, what's that look like?
Well, at the beginning of the year, I was just looking at this. At the beginning of the year, the average rate on the 30-year fixed was 3.2. At the close of October, it was 7. So, and a lot of that change has happened in the very recent past, as opposed to being gradual from January. So, yeah, it's understandable that people would be thinking twice about what their next move is, as far as whatever purchase that might be.
Right, and in those same times, their buying power obviously decreases as the cost of money increases, the interest rate rise, it not only affects the actual mortgage rate and the mortgage payment itself, it also affects the debt that we have. Credit card debts have gone, payments have gone up, so our debt to income ratios are adjusted. That has absolutely nothing to do with the mortgage, but more in line with their consumer spending habits. And have you seen that folks that are coming to see you are having to have those conversations of what they're going to buy, the size, the price of the house, based on not just the mortgage rate increase, but also their spending and their consumer debt?
Well, I certainly think people's radar and antenna are up. As prices go up on other things, it makes us more price sensitive to everything that we spend our money on, including housing, of course. So, yeah, that's definitely been part of the conversation and on people's minds. At the same time that the rates have done what they've done, on the bright side of things, the pressure on buyers, as far as the number of buyers trying to get the same house, has eased up some, which has made for a market that's still very, very vibrant, but less competitive as far as, and still competitive in some instances, but maybe where there were 12 bids on one house, maybe now there's just 4 or 5. And so it makes it more possible, even if it's a little different context than it was a few months ago.
Yeah, and I think the numbers bear that out in the data itself. I mean, we were looking at some numbers just for our local market, and in the Triad area MLS, which is it's a pretty wide slosh, but it's basically from the foothills to the Triangle and Raleigh area. We've seen probably about a 60% increase in the number of listings that have come on the market in the past 60 days. That's helped out not just with the number of buyers, but the choices they have available, and the number of showings on listings has dropped considerably, close to 40%. The number of showings until a property sells. So I mean, before a property was showing 15, 16 times before it would sell, but it was doing that in a 3-day period. So it was 15 showings in 3 days, whereas now it's more like 8 showings before closing, and that's happening over a 15, 20, 30-day period. So it's spreading out, giving the consumer, while they have issues on the numbers, on the cost of it getting into the deal, what they lose in that, they gain in the ability to really just make a discerning decision, make a good decision that hopefully buyer's remorse is reduced.
Agreed, and they're not having to buy things without having had time to really think it through or go in a second time and take a look, which are fairly reasonable things to do before you make a home purchase. So I think, to your point, that's definitely been an upside of the market.
Absolutely.
So when Norma, when people come to you and they're like, "Hey, I probably would have bought a house 6 months ago, but the rates are crazy right now. I'm just going to kind of sit back." Do you have any strategies that you would offer said buyer to maybe get into the purchase now with some other tools?
Well, the way I usually approach that conversation is, given that you're qualified currently, it doesn't really hurt to keep your options open. You can be taking a look online at what's in inventory, because at this time of the year, as we wind down into December, there are less and less buyers that are active, and so just the right thing might come along. So it doesn't hurt to keep your eyes and ears open, even if you may think this may not be the ideal time. In fact, something may come along that you would not have wanted to miss. Mm-hmm. So we talk about it from that standpoint. And then thinking about it as far as down the road, refinancing is going to be an option for folks who feel like that current rates, probably the pressure on current rates is not going to always be there. So economics go in cycles, and we're just in a cycle. So there'll be another time when refinancing, or if things even continued to go up, you would have gotten in at a time when it was more affordable. So there's really either way, the path has led to a good outcome. And you've got a house in the meantime that you are happy with, and that it's just hard to say, or hard to underestimate or overestimate the quality of life impact the right kind of housing can have for you and your family. So I just encourage people to keep an open mind about what's out there and not miss an opportunity.
Yeah, I think I hate to use the analogy, or the saying, look past the forest for the trees kind of deal. But I feel like so many people get caught up in now, and now's going to be forever. But really, if you look past now, look 1, 2, 3 years down the road, what we're kind of going through is to make everything healthier. And therefore, it's going to be better versus times we've gone through where we really have kind of sat back and going, man, this is not good. As scary as this might be, everybody sees, if you can look past this 1 year time frame, everybody sees that good times are coming. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's never a bad time to purchase a house. And like you said, Norma, if you're seeing certain rates where they're at, you're going to be able to refinance down the road.
Absolutely. And to take that a step further, not making a decision not to purchase real estate should be really taken, very carefully. And it shouldn't be a knee-jerk reaction, and it shouldn't be based upon what you hear on the news today and what the scary people in the box are telling you. But really thoughtful process, because one of the things that we haven't talked about is the price of the home. The price of the home today is not going to be the price of the home in 18 months, especially in our market where appreciation is still happening, where economic factors, companies coming into our market are increasing, which is going to drive population growth, which is going to only shrinken that real estate availability, which is going to drive up prices. We know that. That is just economics 101. And so getting into the house today at a rate of whatever it is, 7%, 8%, whatever that rate is, and being able to get in at call it $300,000, and 18 months later that house is worth $375. Oh, by the way, rates may have ticked down. You still have a $300,000 house that you can refinance that loan and take advantage of it. That's the beautiful thing about mortgages, is that you're not in a permanent situation, because as things go up and down, you have the ability to get different money and get it at the rate that's going to be more appetizing. But if you don't buy, if you're not in the house, you don't own the house, you're not going to participate in that upward momentum of appreciation. You cannot do that. You are out of the game, and you're on the sidelines for that piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
So
great point.
So walk us through some of again, I don't want to call them gimmicks or things of that nature, but what are some options that buyers may have that could help them ease into that house? Thing that's been thrown around that I've heard of that I'm not really 100% positive on is the 2-1 buydowns and things of that nature. How are some little intricate strategies can we help our clients at least ask questions about?
Right, yeah. Well, to address the question about the 2-1 buydown, the way that works is it's between the seller and the buyer. Both participate in that arrangement, where the seller, in exchange for a certain percent of the price of the house, it's usually around 2%, is able to help the buyer with what's called, as you mentioned, the 2-1 buydown. Well, that means buying down the interest rate 2 points for the first year that the buyer is in the home, and 1 point for the second year the buyer's in the home, and then the third year is when they're at the buyer's at the full interest rate. So let's say we start with 7% as the interest rate of the day. So in the 2-1 buy down scenario, the first year the buyer's making payments at 5% interest, and this is a savings of $300-ish a month. So it depends on the loan size, but it's a significant savings for the first year. And then the second year is at 6% that you're making the payments, or the buyer's making the payments. Again, a savings, $150-ish. So it's real money. And as it's easing the buyer into the 7% monthly payment, usually at the beginning when you've moved, you have more expenses where you're replacing a floor, you're painting the whole house, or you're furnishing, so it helps to have some offset of that additional expense incurred as you come into the house in those first years. And who knows, by the time you get to year 3 with that full interest rate of 7%, the economy may have changed to the point where you're able to refinance and not even need to stick at that point for very long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I look at that, and that's an opportunity for young purchasers that are coming into the market. And typically, a young purchaser, when they buy their first home, are going to be making basically the minimum that they're going to be making in their entire life at that point in time. So over time, in 3 years, their wage, their income as a family unit or as an individual is going to increase drastically from year 0 to year 3, whereas that payment becomes that much more comfortable in their lifestyle just based on just natural movement in the employment market. So it's a great option for those folks. Again, they're not for everybody, but there's a group of people and sellers and buyers together that, depending on the market that the seller's in, can really use those opportunities and strategies to help garner deals that might not have happened without it.
Right, and I think it's good for buyers to remember too that every mortgage payment they make, a portion of that goes to the principal of the loan. In other words, you're essentially putting in a savings account or you're investing in an asset a portion of each monthly mortgage payment. So you have something to show for every one of your payments, whereas with renting, it's 100% interest because there's you have nothing. I mean, you had something about you, which was a place to live, but you don't have anything tangible that you continue to have after you have had that month of living there that you paid for with the rent. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind too, because really home ownership is a way to build wealth and an important way as people start out in the world to build wealth. Most people find that they use proceeds from the sale of the first house they buy to buy the second house and so on and so on. And building that equity is a very good start. Homeownership is a very good start to really having an asset, an investment that is yours. And so it's to me, it's a shame that when I see people not being able to take that step, that want to take that step or be timid about that step when it has so much to offer on the long term.
Yeah. You're hearing a lot more about ARMs or adjustable rate mortgages these days as well. And you heard a lot about them before. And I think people maybe scared of them or have some fear factor because of kind of what we dealt with before with them. Can you talk a little bit about ARMs and how they could help right now?
Yeah, ARM stands for Adjustable Rate Mortgage. So it's a mortgage where you would pay a fixed amount for, if it's a 5-year ARM, then your first 5 years are fixed, and then after that it can adjust. If it's a 7-year ARM, you'd pay the first 7 years on a fixed basis, and then after that it can adjust based on whatever the economy's doing at the time. There's a formula, so it's not a random change, but it can change. And understandably, that change is something when you look that many years ahead, it's hard to see, or hard to know what might have come up by then. So it can make some people nervous, but a lot of people don't realize that for most, you've either refinanced or considered a move or needed to make some other change where before you hit the end of that fixed year period, you would have made a change anyway that would have resulted in a different financing context. So you've refinanced the same house because rates have come down, or you have built up so much equity that you have other ideas about how you'd like financing to be structured, or you've been relocated with your job and you needed to sell the home anyway. So it's not that there's no risk associated with it, but it certainly bears out statistically that more likely than not, there'll have been a change in your circumstances before that fixed period is up, or by the time, not long after the first change or two has happened. And some institutions have ARMs, like credit unions, that work a little differently than the conventional Fannie and Freddie adjustable rate mortgages, and they may be fixed for the first 5 years, and then after they have an adjustment, they're fixed again for another 5 years. So that's even less of a risky sort of scenario that people can keep in mind if they have access to a credit union. So yeah, those are some points to ponder about adjustable rate. Rather than being scared of them, at least think through your own circumstances and how that matches up with how the the adjustable rate works before you set it aside as an option that you don't even want to consider. It's worth thinking about.
Right. There's so many other options other than just the typical 30-year. If you're scared of the interest rate that's out there currently, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right,
And
there's
I think the to me, mortgages and the money is super important. But at the end of the day, this is about getting people into a property, a home to live in for their family, meet their needs, comfortable place to live, housing being one of the most important pieces in the hierarchy of needs. And even more importantly, if you can do it and own what you have, you are not only setting yourself up for that comfort, you're setting yourself up for long-term success that you just can't realize right away. And for the typical American, that middle income, middle of the road that pretty much makes up 75, 80% of the population, if they can get into a home, purchase it, regardless of what the payment is, regardless of what the cost of the money is, they are going to win and be better off in 10 years because of that decision they made. You know, there's just wealth for the middle income folks is generated in real estate. Mm-hmm. And owner occupant, where I live, that's where it's generated. And to be able to go build wealth in other places is just so difficult when it is so, I don't want to say easy in owning real estate, because it's not owning real estate, even if you're living there, is not easy. But it's the path of least resistance to wealth building, even generational wealth building for your kids.
Oh yeah, the stats all say that.
So, you know, and again, money is temporary. You know, the cost of money is temporary. It goes up and down. It goes up and down daily. It definitely goes up and down monthly, yearly, and so those things can change. And finding the right partner to help you be able to guide you through that is super important. And that's one of the reasons that we have Norma here today, is she's so good with sitting down with folks and being able to peel back the onion, figure out what their needs are, what's important to them, what are the values that they need, and be able to help them get into that, because that if you can get them over that hump and get them into that house, it sets them up for such great success down the road.
I'm such a believer in homeownership. I mean, I've talked to so many people who are renting that just couldn't wait to get into a place where they were the ones who decided when the sink got fixed, where they were the ones that got to decide what color went here or went there, where they decided when the lawn got cut and who did this repair and who did that repair and when that got done. And I just think that's such a big part of that hierarchy of needs that you talked about, being able to have a secure and safe and place that you have, that you're in control of. And then not to mention just the importance of or the value of being a part of a community on a long-term basis, not having to move every 12 months. You get to know people that live around you. You become invested in the things around you, the parks, the churches, the schools, and it just makes a difference in the quality of life, in my opinion, to be planted somewhere and it to be yours. And so I'm a big believer in home ownership. So I love to have that conversation with folks about how we can make that possible for you and what options it looks like that you have that you can explore. At the same time, I'm all about choices. Okay, here's how it can work for you. Okay, here your concern is this. All right, well, let's talk about what ways that might be addressed. Whether it's timing, whether it's working on credit, whether it's saving some additional money. There's a lot of strategies we can talk. So yeah, I love what I do.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I think we're all kind of passionate about home ownership here.
Absolutely. And, you know, we appreciate you coming in. We appreciate your passion. And at the end of the day, I've always said this, and I will continue to say it probably to the day I die. When is the best day to buy real estate? Yesterday was the best day to buy real estate because you're in it. You can now participate in all the upside. If we can just get over the hump of how I get into it, and that's where you come into play, is how I get into it. But in most situations, yesterday was the best day. And so with that philosophy, so many people win. So many people win if they're going to be able to get into it. We appreciate you. We appreciate you being part of our team. This was this podcast really was just about kind of having that conversation that, just because things are not the way they were 6 months ago doesn't mean we're not still doing business, doesn't mean people still don't need to buy houses, doesn't mean a lot of things. It's just what our perspective is. And don't get caught up in the fear. Don't get caught up in the rigmarole of all the things that you're hearing on the news with, everybody shouting scary things. At the end of the day, this is again in the hierarchy needs of 100% of people, and we're here to help them along the way. And it's great to have partners like you to be passionate about this and available for anybody to come talk to.
Agreed.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Well, guys, that kind of wraps us up for today. Until next time, we will see you out on the selling field.
Before we get away, anybody that wants to reach out to Norma, we will leave her contact information in the contact space. So look out for that.
Awesome. Thanks for following up on my mistake. Take care, guys.